Well, hello again, folks. This is Michael Tomasky. I'm the editor of the New Republic, and this is a new edition of Tomaskycast, and I am joined by the great Heather Booth. Heather is a longtime activist in a number of areas, particularly with regard to abortion rights, and I thought it was important, but many other things. But I thought it was important to talk to Heather in the wake of the Dobbs decision about what we do now. Heather, thanks for joining me.
I really appreciate the opportunity. And if you would introduce me that way, I also then say, I'm glad to be with the great Michael Tomasky, because you're providing a vehicle for sharing messages, sharing what we need to do, sharing thoughtful and strategic insights about how we move forward is just so important. I appreciate being your partner in this movement. Well,
it's very kind of you, and partners we are. So tell folks where you were when you heard about the Dobbs decision and how you reacted.
You know, in some ways, it's like when you know a friend is dying.
Yeah.
And then they die.
Yeah.
And so there's a way in which it wasn't surprising, because we knew that this was coming. We knew that there's been a 50-year war, really a war on women, but a war on freedom, a war on democracy, and a war by a right-wing MAGA faction, as well as parts of evangelical churches, to undermine this most intimate decision in a person's life about when, whether, and with whom we have a child or start a family. It was outrageous, and I was both horrified and angry, because women will be harmed. Some will die. There used to be septic abortion wards in hospitals where women had harmed themselves or were harmed. Those may return. And it especially will be harmful for those without the financial resources or family supports or community supports or the information or the feasibility of traveling to other places. And so I was outraged, and I wasn't really surprised, but I am trying to turn my anger into action.
Were you a little bit, I mean, you know, we weren't surprised, but, and it largely comported with the famous Politico leak from May, and so it was largely along those lines. But I still was a little taken aback at the breadth of the decision, at the extent of it, at the radicalism of it, you know, and you know, particularly Thomas's concurrence.
You know, Thomas's comments questioning, should contraception be overturned? Should consensual sex be overturned? Should marriage equality be overturned? This is obviously an extremist, non-judicial. He may be officially a judge, but it doesn't have the reflection of a judge who cares about either popular opinion, popular need. I know you and many of your readers may know that right now, 1 in 5 people who can have a child will have an abortion. That figure was 1 in 3, and then it was 1 in 4. Now it's 1 in 5 because of the increased access to both contraception and to the further restrictions that have limited people's options. Mm-hmm. But 1 in 5, that's 20%. So it means if you had five women, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one of them's likely to have had an abortion or will have an abortion. So it could be your sister, your friend. Yeah. It could have been your mother or grandmother. The majority of people who have abortions now already have a child. They are mothers. Yeah. It means they know what it means to bring a child into the world and be responsible for them. And they realize that it's not the right time. And that's why they're looking for this additional care that needs support. You know, there's a I had a personal experience on Friday. I've told this story to some others. The decision came out, and thinking I was prepared for it, I was ready to move ahead. I started to send out the word. I started to move on messages. I started to try and find out what's the next action we do. How does this relate to the elections? And that night, I had long planned tickets with a friend to see To Kill a Mockingbird, the play. I canceled our dinner together. I was just too busy. I thought, well, I'll probably leave during the intermission. I'm just too busy. But I wanted to respect my friend, wanted to see the play. So I went to the play. Though I had read the book and seen the movie, as many of those watching may have, I had forgotten why the play was named what it was, why the movie was named that way, the book. And there's a line in it that says, or implies, you can, words to the effect of, you can kill a jaybird, because jaybirds, by implication, are vicious and attack others. But it's a sin against nature to kill a mockingbird, because a mockingbird is innocent. And the play is about the conviction and later the lynching of an innocent Black man.
Yeah.
I mention the story because when you say, how did I react? When I heard the Roe decision, I thought I was just moving ahead. And then when I was watching the play, I was overcome with weeping. Yeah. And weeping so intensely that I actually thought I better get a grip or they'll remove me from the theater. I mean, it was really, and I'm still affected by it. And I think it's not just Roe, it's sort of everything. When I was in Mississippi in the Freedom Summer Project, in 1964, the family I lived with in Shaw, Mississippi, after the summer, because they had stood up for freedom in so many ways, the Hawkins family. Their house was firebombed twice, and in the second firebombing, their son and 2 grandchildren were killed.
Oh my God.
And then Mrs. Hawkins later was killed by a policeman. And most people don't even know about that story, though there's much more to tell on it.
Wow.
I knew about it because I had lived with them. And what I realized is that we're in a time that is being a pushback on voting rights and the freedom we care in general about. We're being pushed back by a undermining what we have in democracy of elections itself, with this criminal conspiracy that's being now exposed in these January 6th hearings. Yeah. And it's exhausting. And just being around this level of hate and conflict. So I think it's everything that affected me. So when you ask, how did I react? In my head, I reacted, let's move ahead. Here's our plan.
Yeah.
And in my heart, I find it just such a painful time. And so we particularly need to stay together as a community that values freedom and justice and democracy, and move ahead and realize that just as Andrew Hawkins thought it was worth, and Mary Lou Hawkins thought it was worth the struggle for freedom to even take that risk that he took. And because people have organized and taken some risks that we now need to take, we did win voting rights. We did win Roe. We did win more reproductive freedom and more justice. Not enough. But the only way we win that is when we organize.
So let's talk about the moving forward part. What have you been doing to move forward in these last, 11 days, I think?
Well, what we all need to do is, it's on multiple levels. I talk about 4 M's.
Mhm.
We need members, so we need to reach out. We need more people. There needs to be engagement. We had 80 million votes, 81 million votes for Biden, more votes than any president has ever received. We had 7.1 million more votes for Biden than for Trump, when even a year before we thought that Trump might very well win the presidency. But we won because people organized, we recruited people, we energized them. Right now, there are people who are so dispirited, they're not sure elections matter. They're not sure they should turn out. It's especially true in a midterm election. So we need to recruit people. We need to persuade that small number of people who now are so horrified by the January 6th hearings or by this decision undermining women's most intimate decision in our lives, that maybe there'll be a portion that would be persuaded, and this portion that will also decide, I need to take action now. I need to become engaged and I need to vote. So the first M is members. The second M is message. What we say, that what you do on this writing, on your videos, on your sending out a message, it matters so much. The most effective way we found to talk about this decision in order to persuade and energize people is to connect it to their own life, not to make it an abstraction. Even reproductive freedom, as important as that is, and not just a choice, something that a consumer might make, but freedom in our lives, but to tie it to people's lives. And I said before, it could be your sister, your friend, your cousin. It could be you. So the first is members. The second is message. The third is money. We need to give support for those centers, for the national network of abortion centers, for organizations, whether it's large ones like Planned Parenthood or Sister Song, a Black-led organization primarily in the South, or going to support some of the centers that are still providing care, and the candidates and the campaigns and the organizations. So money will matter. And the fourth is movement. We need to show up. So we can turn out, we can demonstrate, we can raise our voice, we can give our money, and we need to recruit others, and we need to be there. But the protest that's essential is not enough. What we need to do is build the power that is converted to political power, that elects those officials at the state, secretaries of state, governors, change in the legislature, and senators. 2 more Democratic senators who respect reproductive freedom and are willing to address the filibuster rule. 2 more, and we hold the House for Democrats, because the House has already said that they are in support of this. We can overturn the filibuster rule. It's just a rule. You need 2/3 of a vote in the Senate to stop debate, but you can change the rule with a simple majority.
Are you at all optimistic about November? I mean, do you think that this and, the gun issue, the gun violence issue, are turning things around with those remaining middle of the road voters who do still exist and who?
Well, it's not just the middle of the road voters. Yeah. It's the people who are our supporters, yeah. Young people who may not see that it's who haven't yet understood how important it is to vote.
Yeah.
Or older voters, or people who've been tired, or people in the movement who've decided, is there any hope? And the answer, first of all, what is the alternative? If we want a life for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren, for me, I'm now 76. I do care about my grandchildren and their children. I started when I was a young teenager, and now it's up to another generation. But what's the alternative? Andrew and Mary Lou Hawkins knew that it was worth the struggle, not just to die for freedom, but to live for freedom and do the work every day. when it's too hot or too cold or we're too tired or it's too boring. But you have to organize if you want to change the world. The second reason is that there are changes going around, and we should spread the message that there is a path forward. Just some figures on it, some fact-based figures, but it depends all on what we do. If a big part of what we need to do is energize Democrats who voted for Biden and now need to decide to vote in the election, or people who've come of age between the last presidential election and this midterm, we need to engage them. There was just a poll last week, a NPR PBS NewsHour Marist survey that said amongst registered voters, 78% of Democrats, because those are people already, we have to mobilize them, said the Supreme Court ruling made it more likely that they would vote in November, but only 20% of Republicans. So this is an energizing issue, but we need to engage to energize people. Plus, there are other reasons. The redistricting was not as bad as we thought because people worked and took action. And then if the election is seen as a choice between real candidates, two real candidates, and it's not seen as a referendum, as like, do you think things are fine? Have our wishes been met? Our wishes aren't met. But in the real choice between two candidates, we've got this phony Dr. Oz, who may, in fact, be registered to vote in New Jersey and not Pennsylvania, where he's running for Senate. Or the governor, the Republican governor candidate, was in the January 6th criminal conspiracy against this country that was planned and paid for and promoted by the MAGA Republicans. Or in Georgia, we've got, an excellent senator running against someone who, I don't know if he's lying or he doesn't know how to control himself, who says that he graduated in the top of his class. He may not even have graduated from college at all.
Right.
So in these real choices, we have a choice. And the main thing is we need to know there is a path forward and it is up to us. The great Dr. King quote is, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, but it's we who need to bend it. And if there was ever a time we are called to do that bending, it's now.
I'd like you to talk a little bit about your past experiences. I think most people watching this probably know of your work with the Jane Collective in Chicago, helping women procure safe abortions before abortion was legal. And I'd like you to talk about it in the context of, we could be returning to that kind of situation in some states anyway. So just paint a picture of what that was like and what we could be headed toward in certain parts of this country again.
Well, I got involved in this simply as being kind to a friend, doing a good deed. I didn't view it as a political act. A friend of mine who's in the movement said that his sister was pregnant and nearly suicidal and wanted to find someone to provide an abortion. 1965, when this happened, I was 19 years old. We didn't talk about sex publicly.
Right.
I didn't know much about my own body until I read Our Bodies, Ourselves and had other discussions. And I certainly I don't recall having talked about abortion, but I said I would try to help simply as a friend. And I found a doctor through the Medical Committee for Human Rights, the medical arm of the Civil Rights Movement. He was a fabulous physician. His name was Dr. T.R.M. Howard. He really needs respect. He had been a civil rights leader in Mississippi when his name appeared on a Klan death list, in part because he said there should be an investigation of the murder of Emmett Till, who was the teenager from Chicago who was killed when a white woman said that he had whistled at her, and then later even recanted. And actually, your viewers know the story, that there's now, they found a letter that further incriminates her. And there's been even a call by the Till family to have an investigation now. But
I
Dr.
have to,
Howard
Dr.
coming out
Howard
of,
is a fascinating person. This is a biography of him right there that I read just a
yes,
few years ago. He's an incredible
yeah.
life
There's
story.
here's another one on Dr. Howard. Here.
Yeah.
Here on Howard.
Yeah, that's the book.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
So I contacted him. He provided the service, the abortion, and I didn't think much more about it. But then word must have spread and someone else called. Word spread again, someone else called, and someone else called. And I realized I better set up a system.
Yeah.
And 3 people talking about it, providing an abortion in Chicago was a conspiracy to commit a felony. So we called it Jane. Over time, there were too many women coming through. I couldn't manage it myself. I recruited others into what we had called the service. And Dr. Howard was no longer available. I found someone else named Mike. And over time, so many were coming through. At its height, I think about 100 women were coming through a week. Mike couldn't do it himself. He also decided to get out of this practice.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike trained the other women that I had recruited and others who then were drawn to it, which really was the Jane Network.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught them how to provide the procedure. And over time, the women of Jane themselves performed 11,000 abortions.
Wow.
That were safe. They were done in a caring environment, but it wasn't legal. And so it all started out of a values-driven commitment to do a good deed for someone else. And I think that that's how all of our politics should be focused, that it's about making the world better for real people who are in need of better conditions and a better world.
And to talk a bit about, what you think we're headed toward today in certain states.
Oh, when you asked, would Jane start again?
Yeah.
In about half the states of this country, there'll be greater restrictions or bans, and not even that. There'll be a criminalization where you can even get, like in an authoritarian country, $10,000 in Texas if you inform on someone else, your sister, your cousin, your neighbor, who is seeking an abortion and seeking a way to make this most intimate decision of their lives. In Oklahoma, it's up to $100,000. And what are we going to do that first day that someone is paid $10,000 for this, where the first doctor is arrested? We have to plan for that. And as I said before, the people with means, with financial resources, there will be a way for them to find the care that they need in many cases, not in all. Some may find out too late. And then if you have to travel, if you have to make arrangements, you have to know where to go. But particularly for those without the resources, without the support, they will face levels of hardship, limitations in their life, likelihood of increased poverty, likelihood of thwarted futures, and for many, desperate health situations, and some may even die. And it particularly will be made worse by race, that women of color, African Americans, Latinos, Indigenous women will particularly find this harder, and particularly those who are poorer within the society or less access to other resources. But the differences, there are differences between now and when I was involved with the Jane Network. The right wing certainly is different. It's been politicized, it's been monetized, there is money behind this vicious right wing attack on one of our great freedoms. But it's also true, there are more providers now. More are women, more are caring. There's expansive networks of support, but they need greater support. A center that was providing perhaps 500 abortions before now has 1,000 coming through. They don't have the resources. They don't have support. They don't have the time of the day to provide all the care that's needed, and they need support. But the biggest thing that's changed is that we as a people have changed. You and I have changed. Your magazine has changed. The world has changed. The country has changed. 80% of this country does not think that a politician should come between a woman and this most intimate decision of our lives. 80%. Over 70% think Roe shouldn't have been overturned. And even with various restrictions being asked about, it's the largest majority in this country that doesn't think we should be doing these bans or attacks on women making this decision. And so, given that we have changed, given that this is so unpopular, given that it is so against constitutional precedent, given that it is against what a democracy should stand for, that's been expanding our freedoms because people organized, now is the time. We need to organize, we need to turn out, we need to send the messages, we need to give the financial support, and we need to vote, encourage others to vote, and take the shifts now to do what Andrew and Mary Lou Hawkins knew, to know that it is worth taking some risks to live with greater freedom and democracy for all.
You know, I love the way, I know we need to wrap up, but I just want to comment that I love the way you invoke freedom and democracy, because these are values that every American is taught to cherish, and that I think the Democrats have kind of let the Republicans have those concepts, certainly freedom, and they need to be reclaimed.
Well, I appreciate your effort getting out the message to reclaim it, especially now it's just shortly after July 4th, which is supposed to be a celebration of freedom and democracy, but it only lasts, and it needs to be expanded. Yeah. And it only becomes expanded when we organize, when we take action, and when we do it with love at the center, so that we build a broader and broader community, caring for each other, caring for this country, and caring for the people of the world, where everyone has dignity and respect.
Heather Booth, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for giving me this time, and thank you for providing your voice and this vehicle to advance freedom and justice for all.
Let's move forward as best we can. Thank you.